and I have the pleasure to moderate this talk today. I come from the distribution side of documentaries and work with film and impact for quite a while. And I'm so thankful to be invited by these three wonderful people to moderate today. I'm going to start with Oksana as she represents the impact side of the panel. Next to her, you find Eric, one of the producers of Vona, and Johannes, the second producer. Maybe you all three give a very, very brief introduction to yourselves, why you're here today, and what you hope to achieve from the hackathon here, presenting Vona. Oksana, I would start with you.
Hello. So I think my main goal here is to help to build the community and to build this support around the ideas of our impact campaign Vona, and people for impact are the most important. And so doing an impact campaign, you must invest into the community, into the people who support these ideas. So it's like people, connections, and relations are my goals for these days.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Eric Holland with DIM Filmhouse. I started a Ukrainian production company as a direct response to the full-scale invasion to help support the Ukrainian film community. And we've developed this project to shine a light on the war, but also the silent victim, the environment. And it's, we're launching the hackathon as a start of our impact campaign initiative. So we're here to bring this to filmmakers and the film community.
Yes, hello, Johannes Müller. I have a background in political documentaries for German television, mainly with a focus on Eastern Europe, mainly Russia, the Caucasus, and I'm very happy to have been invited to the project, because I think it's a project that finally has the potential to speak to a global audience, and it has the potential to bring into focus, not again, but Ukraine, with a special focus on a topic that is hardly mentioned today, which not only happens in Ukraine, but also in other countries, which is ecocide.
So today we are going to talk about engaging global audiences, and that with an impact perspective based on Vona. Who of you wants to give, for anyone who have not heard of Vona, a very short introduction in the project so that everybody is on the same page about which project we are talking about?
I would let you do it because you initiated it.
Yeah, okay. So Vona is basically a project that we came up with about a year ago, looking at the media fatigue and the landscape for topics on Ukraine and the war that's happening there. So we're kind of looking at it from the side about the environment and how the environment touches all of us, and it is a casualty of war, as a way to bring a topic to the international community, and also show that war is another problem that it impacts us all through the environment, and it is something that carries an impact even past the time when the war will end, and also impacts the global economy and the people on the planet. And so we thought it's important to work on this project.
Thank you so much. So the big question on what we are looking today is how to engage, reach, and not demotivate global audiences. From my perspective, looking at that for quite some time, is that we have seen in the past that films can create global outrage, connect people, but also touch them. And I think that's what you're reaching for. If you think about films and impact, the first films that come to my mind, through my personal journey, is the first film where I saw huge global outrage was Bowling for Columbine, and then through Taxi to the Dark Side, a very harsh political topic of torture was brought to the public. And then being in Cannes, I had to think immediately about For Sama, whose impact campaign actually started here when Waad Al-Khattab used the red carpet here to make a political statement. And I think all these films and many, many more have shown what films actually can achieve and can change in the world. So I would love to start with Oksana and the impact idea. You are not working just on this film, but on many more films and really trying to use them. Where comes the impact idea for you, and how do you think can films change the perspectives of people, and how do you use them in that sense, in a broad sense, and then in particular the idea for Vona?
I guess I would like to start with my first experience working in impact, because actually it gives me a lot of motivation to continue this work, because I understood how personal stories could be powerful and how can they influence the people. This experience was in 2017 when we started to work with a project called Invisible Battalion. The story was like, at that moment in Ukraine, women had no legal right to join the army on the combatant position. It was like old, awful Soviet law that was not changed because like nobody paid attention to army before the Russian occupation happened in Crimea in 2014, and our army was like in really very bad situation, total disaster, demotivated soldiers, no weapon, no uniform, nothing, totally nothing. And the first volunteers appeared in 2014. It was just like people joining the army without anything, wearing sneakers and t-shirts, and they got their weapon like fighting the enemy. And and among those people were my friends who were females, and they joined the army, they took a weapon, go to combatant position, and at that moment, like, nobody cares about the law because there was a danger and they went to stop it. And then, like, really in 2 years, we understood that there is a huge gap in the legislation, and these women who are, for example, snipers, or they work in intelligence, or like whatever other combatant position, in their document it's written that they are nurses, psychotherapists, they work with, I don't know, moral condition of the soldiers, supporting them. So like it was not possible to write in their documents that this woman is sniper and so far. So like we understood this problem and we wanted to help them, because when they return home they didn't have any social security as they should have. They didn't have any career, because like when you are, I don't know, seamstress, as my friend was, so what career, what future? And we wanted to help them, and we created this film as a portrait of women fighting in the front line to show their motivation to like fight with stereotypes about them. And we use this film also in communication with Ministry of Defense, because at that moment it was like totally post-Soviet institution with a lot of sexism. But when we like came up with this film with the support of international organization, they had no other way, and they must change this law. And it was like really a first step to gender equality in our army. And so there is still a long way to go, to this gender equality, but we are proud that we were able to do our first step with this film. So that's why I was really very inspired by this experience, and I understood that when you want to change something in the society, you must work not only with head but with emotions too, because like we are all social creatures, and when this story comes to your heart, when it helps to understand a lot, to be engaged, to be motivated, to build the community around these stories, especially when you have a strong protagonist. So I understood that it worked.
I couldn't agree more. I think what we see is that films, in particular documentaries, they don't only have the chance to transport knowledge or facts, but also reach people emotionally through the design of it, through the storytelling, through the also sometimes the music that is used in films that gives it an additional layer. With Vona, you are at the very start of the project. And you're already thinking about the impact you can create and the alliances that you can forge. Eric, if you think about a global audience, as that is the topic of our talk today, is whom would you like to reach through the series and the film? What is your hope to touch in people, but more importantly, which kind of people are you hoping to engage through the film? Or Johannes?
You mentioned Eric, but I could also say something.
That's fine. Who feels more comfortable with it?
I think for us, like in our planning, like there's like two parts to it. The one thing is having impact while doing the film already, like moving the impact campaign to the very beginning of it, and then of course there is the impact that follows after the project being released and being watched. And currently we're very much focusing also on the momentum and on the potential that an impact campaign can create when you move it to the beginning of the production process, because it nurtures in both ways. To give some examples, like when we as filmmakers, of course, we search for stories. We search for emotional stories, captivating developments that enable the audience to go with the subject and to identify with the subject. So of course, we go out and we search for these stories. And while doing that, we also connect with different stakeholders, which are like, as we see it here at the hackathon, like tech companies, startups, NGOs. They again have then connections to the people on the ground in Ukraine who do the reconstruction work, and this way it creates a movement, it creates momentum. We can nurture from the stories, and at the same time we hope that our energy also helps in the other direction, that it motivates people, that they've been followed, that their stories are being told, especially in times when in Ukraine there's counter-offensive and you might at some times be quite desperate. Yeah.
I can add a little bit to the audience too. There's a bit, I mean, when we first started out, we knew we needed to tell this to an international audience, and we knew we needed to, break through some of the war fatigue, compassion fatigue, and engage people, like as Oksana said, with emotion and storytelling. So we've really been focusing on the core of the power of film and providing strong protagonists, story that you can latch onto. We have a strong issue, and we're looking at universal themes of environment, justice, peace, and providing hope. And a bit of the hope it's been inspiring to see the strength of Ukraine and their resiliency through this, and that has also been feeding us and really wanting us to get this message to as wide of an audience as possible.
There comes in a question we have seen in the past, but also in steps with the Ukraine, with the situation in Ukraine, that there were momentums where there was a huge international attention on what's happening, and then there are waves. For me, it seems like there are waves of interest. I know that this may be an emotional, difficult question, especially for you, Oksana, but within not the national audience in Ukraine, but with the international audience, have you seen that they react to certain stories more, or is there something where you think that, in particular by using the Ecocide as a second storyline, that's something where they could reach on another level?
I'm trying to build my very rational attitude to this issue because I understand human nature, and I think it's something like we Ukrainians and also like people engaged in Ukrainian issue and actively supporting Ukraine should understand and just like look for the ways how we could work with it, because like humans are the same everywhere, and we also experienced this in Ukraine because like we have a war from 2014, and there was like a moment where people were totally not interested on what's going on frontline because like it's a part of human nature. And that's why I also think that I believe in impact campaigns because our brain works the way when we don't understand something is too complicated, too stressful, and sometimes painful. We try to avoid it. It's like totally normal, and but we as filmmakers and people who wants to bring some changes, we need to understand like that to overcome this fatigue, frustration, we need to give some hope and plan. And actually, it's what like we are intending to do with our impact campaign and with our film, like not only to speak about the problem, because sometimes it can be also too demotivating. So it's very important to say that yes, there is a problem, but also you need to give this next step. So okay, I'm informed that there is a problem. What should I do? I take care, but I don't know how I can help. And that's why for me also like it's very inspiring looking for this solution and uniting people in looking for this solution, because like this attention, it's a great potential, but if you don't use it for the next step, you just lose it. And we are watching how it's happening actually.
I've had some years ago a panel with Ellen Heinrichs, a German journalist who is focused on constructive journalism. And her idea behind her work, she also founded a new institute in Germany, is that in particular in the context of the climate crisis, if you only say what's going wrong, you're losing the people because it's, as you said, too much for our mind. So we have talked a little bit of how you are finding the stories, but I would be interested from the producer sides on how you are connecting the ecocide that's happening and for which there, to my understanding, are not yet the solutions found because the war is ongoing, with like a more positive approach in, as you told me before, you're already looking into tech companies who would have solutions. And I think it would be interesting to hear how you're planning on combining that storytelling-wise, if that's something you are already able to speak about.
Like I said already, like this event is an example of also a good opportunity for us to find potential stakeholders that engage in Ukraine, but we're definitely looking into personal stories and developments, like if there's a startup going to Ukraine, like, and like the example like I had in mind is like the upcycling of destroyed villages in Ukraine, and then we can go there and they work, for example, with veterans, and then you have emotional stories from the ground that you can tell, but at the same time we need like a big storyline that carries the whole project, that combines like the smaller stories that we find on the ground. Therefore, we also search for protagonists on a let's call it higher level, people that are people who have a responsibility, who are decision makers. Like we have Alexandra Matvichuk, the Nobel Peace Prize laureate from 22, and with these people we can connect also with the international level, because they meet also people on an international level, and that way we can have like a broader impact, a broader reach also in terms of story, because we're finding stories that again talk to other audiences. Like the ecocide topic itself might engage new audiences that were not initially that much interested in Ukraine, but suddenly they get interested in Ukraine and they see, okay, maybe the solutions we are working on in Ukraine might apply also somewhere else in the world. Yes, so it's really about connecting different storylines for a bigger one, in order to get the full potential of the film, actually, and to get the full potential of reaching the maximum of an audience.
I think I want to add, because this question of the audience and the community we can rely on in this impact campaign is very interesting, because sometimes in impact campaign you have like very understandable community. For example, as it was with the project of Invisible Battalion, when we had women veterans. So yeah, we had also like women interested in women rights, but they were not the most active. And here I think we have very interesting task to bring together very different people, because it could be scientists, human rights defenders, politicians, and we need to create like the message, and where they will be united, when they will have a space to bring their ideas and to work together. Sometimes it could be like people who won't meet in their normal professional life because they have their bubble, but it's very like challenging and interesting for me to work with this, and it inspires me. And also like for this community, it's very important to have this protagonist who will be in the film also, but these protagonists should also have like a strong connection with the community. So I think how it interesting works with impact campaigns and films, because they should be divided in some way, but in some way they influence each other, and very often this impact campaign is driven by the protagonist or protagonists of the film.
That brings me to another question for you from the filmmaking side. How does it feel for you to be so closely connected to an impact campaign and a crucial part of it? And how do you separate the two processes in a way? Johannes talked a lot about how it influences it in a positive way. But what we have heard in the film industry as discussions, at least from the small impact bubble that I come from, is the question also of how to separate it and combine it at the same time. And if you would like to share your ideas on that, I think that would be very interesting.
Yeah, I can speak to that. I think we can take it back to where we started and the power of film. And what we're using is the power of film, power of storytelling, and emotions. And what we looked at is the film sparks action. And so what we're doing with events like the hackathon is we're just focusing that catalyst, that spark to a specific sector, which at the same time is also bringing up the banners of social responsibility from the tech sector and things that are issue based, and just kind of connecting the two worlds. And once the film sparks something, then it kind of goes off into its own life, and we maintain the invisible wall between documenting and observing and following with the people who actually carry it to a solution or a resolution.
That's a very beautiful answer. I have a question. Before we sat down, we said that we also take questions from the audience. So if you have any questions, please feel very free to engage and say hello and share your thoughts. While you were talking in the context of Ukraine, I mean, one of the films we maybe all have to think comes to our minds is, as he just won the Oscars, is 20 Days in Mariupol, who, in my very personal opinion, and I think watching films is always something very personal, is he managed to stay objective and to also explain his role as a journalist, but at the same time, through the images he transports, there is, of course, a clear image and message that is brought to the world. So, talking about the power of pictures, and also how in these days, in particular, also in the climate crisis communication circus, pictures are also used to alter with truths and realities. As filmmakers and film producers, how do you see the role of documentaries, and documentaries in particular like this, to educate also people? And how do you think that this that the saying that you're using, that by using documentaries and designing a certain story, you're altering with reality in a way, because that comes from the other side, from the side who really alters images.
Well, I think there is because I'm in the middle of this when I do political documentaries. Yeah. How do you show the other side? Do you take sides? How do you do that? And my stance was always to stay very close to the protagonists and to tell their story as truthful as possible. And they have a message. And of course, by you as a filmmaker, by making a selection who you show in your film, you also convey a message. But that's also, I think it's also very important to have a message and to be clear what your message is, especially in times when everything gets kind of gray or nobody knows what's right and wrong. But standing there as a filmmaker, having a message, and especially if it's about the environment, and I think you can stand behind your message, and you should, in order to transport also the energy that might come with it. Yeah.
Eric, would you like to add something on that? I mean, you at the very beginning said when the full-scale invasion began, you decided to go there and support through what you're doing, film production. In which way has that decision changed your perspective on filmmaking?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if it changed my perspective on filmmaking. I think it actually helped me make the decision. I come from documentary world. I come from issue-based documentaries, and I actually felt strongly about the invasion. And at that time, I'd recently moved to Berlin and was in Germany, which has its history of similar events, and was hearing a lot of the rhetoric that was coming from our current fascist, Putin, and it enraged me. And I was scrambling around trying to figure out how I can help, what I can do, And then I realized like what I can do is use my skill sets as a filmmaker and a storyteller. But I always, draw this line or make a statement that I think Ukrainians should be able to tell Ukrainian stories. I mean, they're the ones that are living it and experiencing it, and so I'm there to help and support those storytelling mechanisms to an international audience.
Yes.
Yeah, I would tell about like my experience that usually like there is two attitudes, or you try to keep yourself as distant and possible and be objective, or you are very close to the protagonist, to the ideas, because actually you feel these ideas as yours too. And I always work with the second like approach, because it's important for me to choose the topic, to choose the people, protagonists, which I would like to support, and I feel that I want to give them voice because these messages are important. But also, like working with Ukrainian stories, we all have ambitions and aim to make them international too and understandable for the international auditory, and it's like another challenging, and I'm actually always very grateful to my colleagues who are not Ukrainians, but they still feel this pain and empathy, and telling Ukrainians that you are not alone, and it's not only like your problem. We feel like we are together in this, because even like my first days of war, when I found myself like totally frustrated in Poland, and I met Polish people, and the most beautiful things that I heard from them, like it could happen to us. And when people understand this, you are at that moment on the same level.
I think that that's also what we had before. That's the beauty of documentaries, that they allow this emotional level as well. We are here at the Next Pavilion, which is a lot about tech, and you both said, or you all three said it, you want to engage with tech companies, not just to find stories, but also to find solutions. So looking at the plan for the next few months and for productions, which are the steps, what you are going, and what do you hope to achieve through that steps, also in terms of building up a community, and for people who listen to that or watch that or in the room, in a sense, where is a point that they could connect, that they could support, and what could they do if they say like, okay, ecocide on one hand is an important topic. We have to show solidarity with the people in Ukraine who suffer under this full-scale invasion, and people who are interested in both in a way.
I mean, currently, if we look at the timeline of the filmmaking, then we were now at the starting, like with this initiative, the tech companies finding problem owners in Ukraine, and we will closely monitor this process and what is going to happen in the next months, with which solutions they might come up with, what protagonists might be involved in this process, and so this is a process we will follow up on, and at the same time we continue talking with our partners, having a look what their next goals is, like, be it on the legal level, like with Stop Ecocide, for example. What are the next steps on a international level? Which conferences are there? So where can we be present? Also following up on the political decisions, creating some transparency there also already by saying, yeah, we're making a film about it, and inviting people to engage with us and being like a pool for stories, so to say. Yeah, I think that is it. But we keep on developing, I would say, and we're very much open for ideas, and that that might help to put the spark there. You know, is it, you know, any we're very open for any kind of technological, I don't know, innovations, be it on social media, be it conferences that are gonna that will happen in the coming months. So just talking with us, giving us ideas always helps us.
And I'd like to add a bit to that. Like if you take a foot out of the filmmaker side and go to the other side of the impact or technology, and you look at it more as there's all this destruction that's happening in Ukraine. And you know, if you take like a business stance or a technology stance and you want to do something responsible, it is an amazing opportunity to rebuild Ukraine. There's going to be huge budgets put into that. And those technologies that are developed on a real world situation can be applied to any environment, any rebuilding, any sustainable growth. And so you could look at it, you know, holistically from a business side as an incubator or a test bed for things that benefit everyone.
I think if we look back at the last 15 years of what films could achieve, bringing it to the bigger picture, I think there are some examples of films who actually were very successful films, but at the same time really became an incubator. I'm thinking about, I mentioned that before, The Age of Stupid. If you have not watched that film, watch it. It's incredibly funny, but at the same time extremely important. And that film, for example, led to one of the largest anti-climate crisis movements in the UK. They are now called 360 Degree. It's an incredibly interesting story. And there's another, I only come up with UK examples. Now there's also a German example which is really good, which is Valentin Thurn with his film Taste the Waste, who created in Germany a whole ecosystem of tiny organizations working against food waste. So I think we can feel the power, and I think it's very beautiful that you already start with that. I think we have a question there, and I'm excited about that.
Hey, I have a question that it's a pretty simple one, actually. It's what has been up until this point the greatest challenge in developing Vona, and what has been the greatest win on your path up until this point?
So I didn't quite understand it. The question. Can you?
So, what
challenge?
What has been the biggest challenge up until this point in developing Vona, and what has been the biggest win as well on this path up until this point?
You want to say?
I mean, challenges, there's plenty. I don't know which one the biggest would be. I mean, just making a film is a challenge in itself, any film. You know, it's been a challenge to, you know, funding is also a huge challenge for any project. You know, I think nothing out, you know, super out of the ordinary than what would normally come with, you know, developing a project from scratch and getting it to the finish line, or trying to get it to the finish line. On the win side, going back to one of the things you said, I think you know, during those times when you're just slogging through research and like trying to figure out what the story is and you're looking for protagonists, is when you speak to the people who are on the side, like in Ukraine, who are experiencing this day to day, and they just tell you, you know, thank you very much for the work you're doing. Thank you for recognizing this as a problem. How can we support your project? And that really kind of refills the gas tank and lets you be like, okay, we're on the right path, and we're doing something that is already impacting people by giving them hope for their story, and that's been amazing.
And I would like to add just something I wanted to say earlier, and maybe in this context it makes also sense that for me it was also like amazing to see all the variety of of partners, of people who you got engaged, Eric and Oksana, in the project. And coming from the producer side, I think that's at the same time also the win, a big profit that we have now when we offered this project to actual TV channels or the people producing it, because the richer it is and the more they see, okay, they already have thought about who might be the audience and that there is a potential for a broad audience, and they are already engaging with these people, and there are already potential partners for the distribution, be it like, be it on the level of European Commission, be it on the level of different NGOs, be it of media partners that you brought on board, that all these people, they're gonna act as multiplicators. And of course for selling a project this is a big plus, I think.
Yeah, I think I like to add that for me the most challenging and inspire is the feeling that we are doing something really new and we are inventing this path, and sometimes you are walking in you see only the next step and nothing more, and you need still to have this belief that you can walk this step, and it's really challenging, inspiring, and the fact that we already are here and brought so nice partners, so a lot of people together is really a win.
I think that's both very beautiful answers, and also in particular, Johannes, what you said at the end. I mean, at the end, it's always for me, it's about the cause and the film. But of course, we have to make the film visible and find partners within the normal film industry and make it seen in cinemas, in TVs, in schools, wherever, to create impact through film. Because if we forget the distribution side and the audiences who actually, how do we get them into the cinemas? How do we get them engaged? How do we get them motivated watching it? I think that's an extremely important thought, and very beautifully that you mention it, that it already helps in the production stage. I think if I would need to come up with an example is Seaspiracy was a film on Netflix on an environmental topic, and I think that was a very good case example where you could see how the public outrage about the topic made people watch the film and made them interested in the film and sparked the conversation. At the same time, the conversation was sparked by the film, so it was kind of perpetuum mobile that was nurturing itself. I'm very sorry. I was told there was a clock. I don't see the time. I have no idea. We have 10 minutes left. Thank you so much. Sorry, I was lost in thoughts. So are there any other questions or comments from the audience on that issue and on how to kickstart the idea?
I mean, I wanted to add one little key or piece to what Johannes said, and it talks a little bit about a challenge. There's a challenge out there for content, documentary or whatever, that is about war, that is about destruction, that is about loss, and we knew that going in, and so we knew that we had to really, really build up as much base as we could before, taking it to the market. And so we really doubled down on research, really doubled down on who we called and who we tried to get connected to the film. And that's one of the reasons too of trying to, start the impact campaign earlier. Just, we know it's a challenging topic during this time in the world, and we're putting in the effort and the work to make it as engaging to an audience, because at the end of the day, that's what it needs to be, so that it has the best chance to be highly visible.
I have from my experience, people like they can be engaged in some story when they understand that this story is about them too. It's like how our human nature works, because usually we are interested in the facts that also touch us. And I think it also explains like that the decreasing of this interest to Ukrainian project and events in Ukraine, because in some point people just started to feel that it's not about them, it's happening somewhere outside EU and NATO border, and we can like continue a normal life and pretend that nothing has happened because we can't change a lot, as like ordinary people may feel in this situation. And that's why I think it's extremely important to bring this message, how like these events influence on them, because like climate change, environment, it's like the changes that happens, and they would not stop just on the NATO border or EU border. Radiation doesn't know borders, and I think it's very important message to engage, at least like thinking auditory to our project.
I would like to, with what you just said, I would like to connect, to ask Johannes, as you said before, you are specialized in political documentaries, and often we are told by newspapers or by researchers that there's a decrease or there's a tiredness of political topics from the general public, that there is a decrease of attention to those issues. At the same time, we have Reuters research from the Reuters Foundation, research that states that people that in their questionnaire, people of all ages, of all countries, where they conducted the research, mentioned documentaries as the number one source of information for the climate crisis and other climate-related issues. So from your perspective, do you think there is interest in an audience, and are people more or less interested in those kind of topics than, let's say, a few years ago? Did the landscape change, or do you see it differently and say there's a bigger demand on such films transporting these issues that are contextualizing and giving more information?
I think we have a problem that at the level of the decision makers in the TV industry or in the media, that they are afraid, I think, of putting out certain topics. I don't really believe that the people are tired of these topics, but they are tired of the way these stories are being told. It's really about finding different angles of telling these stories, and also about having commissioning editors that are brave enough to stand for the topics that they think are important and not what they think that the others might not be interested in. Because if you have a strong story, people will get interested in it. It's in our human nature, I think.
I think that's a very beautiful closing word, to be honest, because, I mean, we are all here to watch films, to sell films, to buy films, to find content, and I couldn't agree more. If there's a good story, people, no matter on what issue the story is, people will engage with it and will love it and share it and be inspired by it. So thank you very much. I think that was lots of useful information, maybe a call for everyone who listens or sits here. I think you all, if there are any ideas on how to support Vona, how to expand your network, people you should talk to, I think you are very open for ideas, right? So please connect, because that's also the idea behind the hackathon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.